In previous videos I've talked about a potential next bike for myself, and I've looked at options like the Kawasaki W800, the Kawasaki VN900 Classic, and also the Honda NT1100 and Honda Africa Twin. Now my thinking at the time was to sell my NC750X and replace that bike with one bike that would do it all. So a bike that I could tour on, a bike that I could do adventure riding on, and a bike I could just run around on a daily, day-to-day basis. Now, ideally the Africa Twin is probably the best suited for doing the all-round work, but after sitting on the Africa Twin at the dealership, I felt the seat wasn't that comfortable and the reach to the bars was a little bit more than I was liking. So I thought the NT1100 might be a really good option for me, having a more comfortable seat and just being more set up for touring than what the Africa Twin is, albeit at the cost of adventure riding. But to be honest, for the sort of adventure riding I do, which is mainly gravel roads, I can't see why I couldn't take an NT1100 on those roads, or the same roads I take my NC750X. At the time I was in two minds whether I wanted to sell my NC750X, and I've come to the decision that I don't want to sell my NC750X. I want to keep that bike because it's just too good a all-round bike. I can do a little bit of touring on it. I can't go too far, but I can do a little bit of touring on it. I can do all the adventure riding I want to do. I don't have any desire to do any hardcore adventure work, and it'll handle all my day-to-day running around. So it is really the perfect all-round bike for me, apart from touring. So now that I've decided I want to keep the NC750X, what I've decided to do is, when the means become available, I will buy a bike dedicated to touring. And as you know, I've been looking at a few options, one being the FJR 1300. In that video I made where I went and had a look at an FJR 1300, you guys also recommended that I should look at the Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX. So I've been doing just that. I've been doing a lot of research on that bike and I'm really liking what I'm seeing. A lot of the reviews I'm seeing are saying that it's comfortable, it's torquey, it's powerful, it handles really well, and it's really well featured. So today what I thought I'd do is have a really good look at the Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX and try and work out if it's going to be suitable for me, because I'm really liking what I'm seeing and what people are saying about this bike. And the price it's currently at it's really good value for money. So with the NC750X being such a good bike, why do I feel the need to add a tourer? Well, I'll give you an example. Coming up at the end of this year in October is the Phillip Island MotoGP, and that's a race I'm planning to try and get to. Now that ride is a 3-hour plus ride. I know that if I did that ride on my NC750X, I'd probably arrive a little worse for wear. So I've got to get up at 6 a.m, ride to the track, which is a 3-hour plus ride, so I'd get there just after 9, spend a day at Phillip Island watching the races, and then ride home for another 3-hour ride at the end of the day. So I know from my current experience with my NC750X, that's going to be a bit of a challenge on that bike. Now, if you're a lot younger than me, you probably find it to be okay, but for where I am at my age, I just find that on that bike, it's going to be a bit of a tall order, hence me looking for a more comfortable tourer. So what's attracting me to the Ninja 1000 SX? Well, there's a lot to like, really. It's a sports tourer, but it offers a touring package which is light for a tourer when you consider what an all-out tourer weighs. It's got very good power. It's got an engine which is tuned to deliver really good torque. What I'm hearing from people is that you can accelerate in basically any gear and it will just pull away. So the torque's really good. It's still got good horsepower. Now, horsepower is going to be good if you're living in Europe on the autobahns and at 140 horsepower, I think it is. We'll look at those figures in a tick. Once you get over 200 kilometres an hour, you've still got good power for acceleration. That is of no benefit to me whatsoever. I'm more interested in the bike's ability to just ride around at normal legal speeds and still be nice to ride. It's an inline 4-cylinder, which I like inline 4s, 1043cc capacity, and it's got a lot of features that you wouldn't expect to see at this price point. In Australia, the Ninja 1000 SX sells for $19,128 right away. Now, I did speak to the local dealer. They didn't have one on the floor. He was saying that the Ninja 1000 SX comes standard with the panniers. But looking at the images here on the Kawasaki website, they're not showing the panniers on the bike. I'm going to contact him again and just double check that, because I don't think it does. I think at that price, you're just getting the bike and the panniers will be extra. Back in 2016, I actually looked at this bike, but the 2016 version, when I bought my Versys 1000, and I chose the Versys 1000 over this bike. Back then, the seat wasn't as comfortable and it just wasn't set up as well as it is now. So at $19,128 Australian right away, when you consider what bikes are being priced at the moment, that to me is really good value, especially when you look at the tech that's in the bike. It's got an assist and slipper clutch. It's got cruise control as standard. It's got an IMU. It's got Kawasaki's cornering management function. It's got Kawasaki's traction control. It's got power modes. It's got smartphone connectivity. It's got a quick shifter as standard. ABS is standard, which is normal for all bikes in Australia. And it's got Kawasaki's intelligent anti-lock braking system. So that's a lot of features, especially when you're talking about the IMU, that really aren't available on bikes in this price range. Combine that with the 1000cc engine, reported smooth riding, comfortable seat, which has also been reported. It's looking like a very attractive package. The other thing that appeals to me is when I was sitting on the Africa Twin, and on a few bikes I've been sitting on lately, I really feel I've been sort of reaching to the bars to try and find a comfortable riding position. The riding position on the 1000 SX, from what I've seen, it looks like the bars are pretty close to you. So it looks like you're still sitting canted forward a little bit, but you still have more of an upright riding position, and the bars seem to be very comfortably placed just at hand from what I've been seeing on the videos. I'm going to try and get a test ride, which I doubt I will be able to do, or at least sit on the bike at the dealership if I can. There was a 1000 SX at a Kawasaki dealership I saw a little while ago, and I did ring that dealership to see if it was still on the floor. It was gone. I asked if they were getting any more in, and he said they basically only had 4 Kawasaki's on the floor, and they were 400s, 3 400cc bikes and the Vulcan 650 cruiser. And the only way they could get bikes from Kawasaki now is if a customer ordered a bike and put down $1,000 deposit. They can't even get floor stock just to have sitting on the floor at the moment. So the chances of me getting to sit on one at a dealership is going to be slim, but I will hunt around and I will travel if I have to try and get to actually sit on one. And if I can get a test ride, even better. Trying to think about what this bike would be like to test ride. The only thing that I've test ridden recently that would be similar in my mind would be Honda's CB1000R, and I'll put a link to that test ride video at the end of this video. And what I liked about the CB1000R was I was surprised actually how torquey the engine was. I loved the way it rode. I really liked how agile the bike was, the way it braked, the way it turned in, the way it handled. For me, I find these bikes to be safer to ride because they just have so much in reserve. And I remember coming up to a corner or a bend in the road on the CB1000R when I was on my test ride, and it just sort of came up on me all of a sudden. It was a really tight right angle turn. For a split second I sort of thought, oh, am I going to make this? I just grabbed the front brake, gave it a squeeze, and instantly washed off all my speed, dropped it in, and it was nothing. You know, it was nothing at all. And I think it's because I'd been accustomed to riding cruisers where you sort of have to allow time to slow down, and everything is more deliberate and slower. And then getting back onto a bike like the CB1000R just reminded me how agile and how good they really are. And to me, they feel safer because of all the extra performance you have on a bike like that. And I'm expecting the Ninja 1000 SX to be very similar. I'm expecting it to have really good braking, really good handling, and just really good performance overall. With the full fairing bodywork, you should get good weather protection in winter. Now, the screen's not as tall as probably I'd like, but there is a touring screen which is taller, and I think that would be tall enough for me for this type of bike for touring in winter, because our winters here are not like you would get in Europe or North America. In winter, the coldest I would ride in would be 0 degrees Celsius. You know, we're not going to have snow on the roads or anything like that. It's probably going to be around about 8 degrees Celsius. On a nice day in winter, it might be 12, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, you know. From past experience riding these type of sports tourers in those conditions, they've been absolutely fine for me. So the Kawasaki Ninja 1000 SX is really shaping up as being an attractive option for me as a second bike to my NC750X. Now, another bike you guys have been talking about is Suzuki's Gsx S 1000 GT. And you've also been recommending or asking if I could look at that bike. So what I thought I'd do today is just put the Gsx S 1000 GT up against the Ninja 1000 SX, it's a lot of letters, and just see how they compare specs-wise and why I would go one bike over the other. So first of all, let's look at the images of the bikes side by side. The first thing I'm going to look at is the shape of the seat, because on a lot of sports bikes and sports tours, I still see the seat angled up, and after having bikes with seats that are angled, I know for myself that I really don't like them, because every time you hit a bump, the suspension compresses and then just sort of pops you up off the seat and I end up bouncing onto the tank, and I really dislike that. So what I'm looking for, and from past experience riding bikes like this where the seat is as flat as possible, I find those bikes to be the most comfortable to sit on for a long time. So looking at the Gsx S 1000 GT, the seat, even though it's got a bit of a dish to it, is pretty flat. Now, I think that would be comfortable for me looking at that. I was expecting it to have more of an angle actually. And then if we look at the Ninja 1000 SX's seat, it too is very flat. I have heard reported that the Ninja 1000 SX seat, the new version, which is I think 2020, this version came out, the seat is much more padded than the previous generation. I'm sure I've done do I fit videos on both these bikes. So let's bring up the rider ergonomics for both of them for someone my height, 6'1", and I will include these at the end of this video so you can see riders 5'3" to 6'4" on both of these bikes. So looking at the leg bend, that looks very comfortable. This is for the Ninja 1000 SX, and the reach to the bars looks very comfortable. And if I was to slide back in the seat a bit, I would be leaning a little bit more forward and probably have a little bit more weight on my wrists, which I personally don't mind. I actually prefer a riding position like that, just having a little bit of weight on my wrists. So looking at the Ninja 1000 SX, I'm predicting that's going to be a pretty comfortable riding position for me. Now, if we look at the Suzuki, that's interesting. It looks like I'm sitting lower in the bike on the Gsx S 1000 GT, and I'm sitting more on top of the bike on the Ninja 1000. And I don't have the seat heights here for the Ninja 1000 on this particular Do I Fit video because it's an older one. So let's go to the specs and have a look at the seat heights for both bikes. And the seat height for the Ninja 1000 SX is 835 millimeters. And for the Suzuki, just on the Suzuki actually, while I'm looking for the specs, the Gsx S 1000 GT is sold out in Australia. So that's proving to be very popular by the looks. And I'm also noticing that we're going to have two models in 2022, and that is the Gsx S 1000 GT and the Panorama GT. Just briefly looking here, it looks like the Panorama is going to come standard with panniers. Now the Gsx S 1000 GT sells for 19,090 Australian dollars right away, and the Panorama GT sells for 20,590 Australian right away. If you're looking for the specs, they're right down the bottom of the page. So seat height is 810 millimeters. So it is a lower seat height, only 15 millimeters, which is just over half an inch, but it is a lower seat height on the Gsx S 1000 GT. And I'm also looking at the seat to peg ratio. Yeah, so it looks like the pegs are closer to the seat on the Suzuki as well than the Ninja 1000. And it also looks like the handlebars might be higher in relation to the seat than the Kawasaki, but I'm not sure how much that foam compressors on the Kawasaki seat. And this is why it's hard to do these Do I Fit videos. I've got to estimate how much the foam's going to compress. And being that I've since learned that the seat has a lot of cushioning in it, I probably could drop the rider down a little bit than what I'm showing here. So there's going to be that little bit of variation there. But riding position wise, they're pretty similar, although I'm predicting I'll have a little bit more room on the Kawasaki than the Suzuki. Looking at the weights of the two bikes, the Kawasaki is 235 kilograms wet, ready to ride, and the Gsx S is 226 kilograms wet, ready to ride. So the Suzuki is about 9 kilograms lighter than the Ninja 1000. But I think on a bike this weight, that's going to be negligible. You're not really going to notice that too much, I don't think. So I'm going to call them pretty much similar when it comes to weight. Now, when it comes to horsepower, the Kawasaki produces 142 PS at 10,000 RPM. So that's near enough to 140 horsepower. And the Suzuki produces 112 kilowatts at 11,000 RPM. So that's 150 horsepower. 112 kilowatts is 150 horsepower at 11,000 RPM. So the Kawasaki is producing its peak horsepower at 10,000 RPM and the Suzuki is producing its peak horsepower at 11,000 RPM. And if we look at torque, the Suzuki is producing 106 Newton meters at 9,250 RPM. So 106 Newton meters of torque equals 77.9 foot-pounds. So let's say 78 foot-pounds of torque for the Suzuki. At 111 Newton meters, the Kawasaki is producing 81.8 foot-pound of torque. So the Suzuki has 78 foot-pound of torque and the Kawasaki has 82 foot-pound of torque. Let's see where they're producing their peak torque figures. So the Kawasaki is producing its peak torque at 8,000 RPM and the Suzuki is producing its peak torque at 9,250 RPM. So what that's telling me is that the Kawasaki is going to feel more torquey to ride and the Suzuki is going to feel more horsepower oriented. So that's telling me the Suzuki is going to be more sporting focused in the way it develops its power and the Ninja 1000 is going to be more touring oriented in developing more torque earlier in the rev range than the Suzuki. For me, I'll always go the more torquey option. That's instantly more appealing to me than having more horsepower. Now, after looking at some videos of the Kawasaki at speed, I saw the Ninja 1000 being put through its paces on the Autobahn in Germany and it had no problems cruising above 200 kilometers an hour. 140 horsepower is plenty. I don't need the extra 10 that the Suzuki is going to have. And in reality, I'll never be anywhere near those speeds. I'll always be around the legal speed in Australia because we just can't afford to do that here. So power and torque wise, I'm going to say that the Ninja 1000 is a better fit for me here. Ergonomically, I'm going to say the Ninja 1000 is a better fit, looking at the two side by side. And when it comes to features, I think they're pretty well similar in features. I'm sure the Suzuki will have a 6-axis IMU like the Kawasaki. The Suzuki has modes, traction control, ride-by-wire. It has a quick shift, has cruise control. So they're pretty well identically spec'd from what I'm seeing here, Suzuki and the Kawasaki. Looks-wise, I personally prefer the Kawasaki. Brakes-wise, the Suzuki looks like it might have an advantage with the Brembo calipers, but I've heard that the Kawasaki's brakes are excellent. And I see that the Suzuki's mentioning vibration absorbing footrests. And I also know that the Kawasaki has the same deal where the foot pegs are rubber mounted and they actually have a little weight on the heel protector to help counteract vibrations. And the Kawasaki also has heavier bar end weights to help counteract vibrations through the handlebars. Now, just looking at fuel tank sizes, the Suzuki has a 19-litre fuel tank and the Kawasaki also has a 19-litre fuel tank. Range is going to be pretty similar between the two bikes, I'd expect. So looking at the two just on paper and from what I've seen on the ride reviews and from what I'm seeing here, if we were to sort of put them on a scale, it looks like the Suzuki is more, they're both sport tourers and they're both very similar sport tourers, but I'd put the Suzuki more on the sporting side and I'd put the Kawasaki more towards a touring side, which would suit me better. And price-wise, they're very similarly priced. At $19,928 right away for the Kawasaki, I'm expecting you're going to have to add the price of panniers to that, which would put it very similarly priced to the Panorama GT version of the Gsx S 1000 GT at $20,590. So there you have it, two sports tourers that are certainly worth considering. From what I'm seeing here, the Ninja 1000 SX is going to be a better fit for me. What I'm going to do is try and find a 1000 SX somewhere to at least sit on. If things go extremely well, get a test ride. And if and when I do so, I'll let you guys know, make a video and let you know my findings. Okay, I think I might call it quits here. I hope you found this video to be of use. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And as always, thank you so much for supporting the channel. And hopefully I can get to see all of you again in the next one. Bye for now.